So when and where did you start?
Comedy Store in Los Angeles, Hollywood, 1976.
Oh, for crying out loud.
I was working as a house painter, and I was painting a house right down the street from the Comedy Store, and we used to drive by it every day to paint this gig. And I was always a funny guy, and I used to love listening to Pryor albums and shit, stuff like that. So Monday night, it was amateur night, and they called it potluck.
Right.
That's what Mitzi used to call amateur night, potluck. So I saw it up there, and I've been reading about the Comedy Store and the TV Guide and stuff like that. So I decided I was going to write myself a 5-minute act. You have to do 5 minutes. So I wrote myself a 5-minute act that afternoon while I was painting the house, and then that night I got in line. I was in line with Dana Carvey, Paul Rodriguez, a couple other guys that really, got big. But we were doing amateur night. And so I went on that night. I still had paint in my hair because I didn't go home. I didn't have time. I had paint on my elbows. And I went on stage. And then within 6 weeks, I was a regular. I was working at comedy. I was painting during the day still because I was married with a kid. And I was doing stand-up comedy at night, and working the door. I was the doorman. Sam Kinnis and me and Dice Clay were all
doormen.
We would rotate, and one night one guy would MC, the other guy would sell tickets, the other guy would be the seater. So we rotated like that way. And then Mitzi Mitzi was paying us $20 a night and a T-shirt and one drink. That was she paying us for the whole show. But we were learning, and we got to work with some of the best comics in the country. I mean, Leno and everybody was up there every night doing spots. Pryor. So what we used to do, I told Mitzi later, I ended up painting the Comedy Store 4 times, inside and out, and her office and her home. I mean, I was just, and then afterwards, all the guys that worked there and some of the comics, we'd all go down the street to this Denny's and have breakfast and talk about comedy because we were still kids and excited about it. But yeah, it was fun times.
What was your first big break? When did you really know that you were a professional in this business?
I don't know. I was actually headlining rooms my first year. It didn't take me long because I'm a funny dude, man.
I know. I know you are.
Within a year, I was headlining. I was making $1,200 a week. That's back in the late '70s, and that was a lot of money back then.
Yeah.
So I think traveling with Rodney Dangerfield was really, really cool. When your name's in the marquee at Caesar's Palace, and you're opening up for Rodney Dangerfield, because I did 2 HBO specials with Rodney.
Right.
And I got to travel around with him a lot, and he was a riot. I mean, I laughed all day long, every day with Rodney, and him and I used to hang around together, and there's a lot of stories that he mentions about being with me in his autobiography. Right. So that's sort of cool.
What's it nowadays? Obviously, you've been traveling and working all these years. What's the big difference between clubs nowadays as opposed to the '70s, '80s, '90s? What kind of changes have you seen?
A lot. I mean, back in the '80s, when the stand-up comedy clubs were like really cashing in. And we used to do 2 shows a night, 7 nights a week, and then a lot of clubs were going Monday through Sunday, and they were packed every night.
Sure.
And people were paying covers. Now they got to move 2-for-1s or free tickets because it just got oversaturated. And it used to be when you were a comic, they'd mail you a plane ticket. I mean, now a lot of these guys sleep in their car driving to get a gig, and hopefully they can work next week so they have a place to live. Asleep. Yeah. But back then, I mean, I'd have 6 or 7 plane tickets for 2 months in advance, been just sitting in my dresser at home, and they pick you up in limos, and they drive. Everybody was excited to see you, and then about 10 years after that, it was like the waitresses would always be excited, at the prior times. Say, who's here this week? Oh, John Fox. Oh, he's funny. Yeah. And now you come back 10 years later, and some of the same girls are there, and you say, who's coming this week? John Fox. Oh, that fucking asshole. You just don't get no respect anymore. Used to, and that's why this comic I was working with, he was just a young kid, and he says, listen, the show starts at 8. You know, let's get there around 7:15 or something. Screw that, man. If you show up too early, they lose respect for you. You gotta have them on the edge of your seats. Anybody seen the comics yet? You get it too early, next thing you know, you're bussing tables and shit. you gotta earn some respect.
You're living now in Chicago?
Yeah.
How did you pick Chicago to live?
Well, I grew up there. I grew up in Chicago, and I moved to Los Angeles when I was 16.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, my mom and dad were divorced, and I was the oldest, and I was always getting in trouble. You know, I was skipping school, and my mom had the 4 other kids, and she thought I was a bad influence. So her brother was a drill sergeant in Oceanside.
Oh my.
After the Marine Corps. So he said, I'll whip him into shape. And he was like G.I. Joe, man. I had a long ponytail when I left Chicago, because I was in a rock band and stuff. I was a wild kid. So I got off the plane, and his name was Jim, Uncle Jim. And Uncle Jim picked me up at the airport, and the first stop on the way home was the barber shop. He didn't even tell me we were going. He just pulled over. He pulled right up to the barber shop. He says, "Get in." So they caught. I was crying. You know, to have a long ponytail, and I thought it was cool.
Yeah.
And I was in California, and I wanted to look like a hippie, and he made me look like G.I. Joe.
Who are some of the guys you like hanging out with now? Are there comics that come through like Chicago if you're not working?
Well, Tommy Rhodes is a real good friend of mine. And in fact, he stays at my house when he went into Chicago. I made a mistake. I mean, I love Tommy, he's like a brother. But I was going on the road, and he had a week off. And he said, I got the week off, you know, and I don't want to rent a hotel. I said, why don't you stay here, you know? Well, I wouldn't stay.
Yeah.
I came back a week later. My house looked like the Fifth Army had been camped out in it. I mean, I can't believe he left it there. And he'd spilled a gallon of red wine on my carpet.
Oh.
Cigarette butts every place. And I go, Tommy, what the hell is it? He's over. He said, I'll give you $100.
Oh man.
But I like hanging out with him and some of the older guys. You know, Larry Reeb is a real good friend of mine. So we'll go to Cub games and other comics that come in the road, because I moved to Chicago right behind Zany's.
Right.
Right. And so, because Zany's was like my home Chicago club. And so I decided, well, I'm going to rent myself an apartment close to Zany's. So I rented an apartment, right? And 2 days later, I get a knock on the door, and it's Will Durst. And I go, Durst? He says, what are you doing? How did you know I live here? He says, the comedy condo is right next door.
Oh.
You know how many millions of places I could have picked? I had no idea. And I bought an apartment next to the comedy condo. So then I get knocks on my door at 3 o'clock in the morning for somebody looking for rolling papers. Hey man, I got a chick over here. You got any rubbers? That's the last place I would have rented is next to the comedy condo. But this is my luck.
Oh well. All the years, Ollie Joe Prater, I'm sure you, yeah.
Oh yeah, him and I
What a legend. I mean, did you guys ever run together? Any stories of you running with Ollie
we did a
Joe?
lot of things together. In fact, I got a great Ollie Joe story. We worked together, and this is when I was just starting. And Ollie was you know, he was like 350 pounds then. And he was just a big dude, and he had every vice